Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Bone Lake in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Bone Lake. We will cover what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and the most interesting facts behind the scenes. Along the way, I will also guide you through the technical departments, the music, pre-production and filming process, as well as post-production, budget and box office details. You will also hear a short story overview and a review of the plot. On top of that, we will break down the performances of the star cast, explain which actor played which role, and highlight the standout moments that made Bone Lake memorable. That is why you should stay with us until the very end to learn everything you need to know about Bone Lake. Bone Lake is a project that quickly gained attention for its unique mix of suspense, storytelling, and character development. From the early stages of pre-production, the creators put a lot of effort into crafting a story that balances thrilling sequences with emotional depth. The screenplay was designed to keep the audience engaged with twists and turns that reveal new details at just the right time. During the planning phase, the team carefully scouted locations that gave the movie a gritty and natural look, setting the tone for the mystery and drama that follows. The filming process was equally impressive. The director and cinematography team used sharp visuals and clever camera work to heighten tension. Wide shots were used to capture the isolation of the setting, while close-up shots drew viewers into the raw emotions of the characters. Lighting and color grading played a strong role in creating the haunting atmosphere that defines Bone Lake. Music also deserves recognition in this movie. The score enhances suspense, builds anticipation, and gives emotional weight to key moments. Each scene feels more powerful because of the sound design and background score, which often foreshadows important plot developments. When it comes to post-production, the editing team did a strong job of keeping the pace tight while also allowing important scenes to breathe. The use of sound effects, visual effects, and careful sequencing all contributed to a polished final product. The budget of Bone Lake was moderate compared to big studio blockbusters, but the creative team used every resource effectively, which shows in the final quality of the film. At the box office, Bone Lake performed well and attracted attention from audiences who enjoy gripping stories mixed with strong performances. The cast deserves a major highlight. Each actor brought their character to life with conviction, making the story believable and engaging. From lead roles to supporting characters, the performances carried emotional weight and created moments that stayed with the audience long after the credits rolled. Standout scenes include confrontations, revelations, and subtle character-driven moments that showcase the talent of the ensemble. In conclusion, Bone Lake is more than just another thriller. It combines technical excellence, thoughtful storytelling, and powerful acting performances. From its careful pre-production planning to its gripping final scenes, this movie is a reminder of how much impact a well-crafted film can have. If you want to experience suspense, emotion, and cinematic creativity, Bone Lake is a movie worth watching. Bone Lake is a 2024 American erotic psychological horror thriller directed by Mercedes Bryce Morgan and written by Joshua Friedlander. The movie stars Maddie Hassan as Sage and Marco Pagasi as Diego, a couple whose relationship is hanging by a thread. Alex Rowe plays Will, and Andra Nachita plays Cyan, two strangers who arrive unexpectedly and set off a dangerous chain of events. The story begins with a shocking prologue where a couple is hunted through the woods and brutally killed near the lake. This violent opening sets the tone for what follows and establishes Bone Lake as a film that mixes erotic tension with horror. After this, the movie shifts focus to Sage and Diego, who arrive at a secluded lakeside mansion for a much-needed weekend away. Diego, an aspiring novelist, has plans to propose to Sage during their stay. Sage, however, has been carrying the weight of their financial struggles and quietly resents Diego's lack of progress, which immediately creates tension between them. Their retreat takes an unexpected turn when Will and Cyan show up at the mansion. Claiming that the house has been double-booked, they convince Sage and Diego to let them stay. At first, the atmosphere is friendly, but the mood quickly changes. Will and Cyan begin to test the couple's limits, turning the weekend into a psychological game. Cyan teases Sage and Diego with provocative behavior, while Will undermines Diego's confidence by flirting with Sage and positioning himself as more assertive and dominant. The four begin to engage in drinking, flirting, and subtle manipulations that blur the line between playfulness and cruelty. As the weekend continues, the pressure grows. Sage and Diego's insecurities are exposed, and past resentments resurface. Will and Cyan push the couple further into uncomfortable territory, seducing, mocking, and manipulating them. What starts as awkward tension escalates into a dangerous power play where jealousy, humiliation, and betrayal take center stage. The relationship between Sage and Diego fractures, and the sense of isolation at the lake only amplifies the unease. The final act of the movie takes a sharp turn into violence and gore. Psychological warfare explodes into physical confrontation. Betrayals lead to shocking acts of brutality, and the mansion becomes a place of chaos and bloodshed. The film does not shy away from explicit violence, delivering gruesome scenes that contrast sharply with the erotic undertones earlier in the story. Characters make desperate and often irrational choices as survival becomes the only focus. Some manage to escape, but not without lasting emotional and psychological scars. Cinematography and music play a major role in amplifying the tension. Wide shots of the lake emphasize isolation, while close-ups capture raw emotion. The score builds suspense and adds intensity to both erotic and horrific moments. The performances of Maddie Hassan and Marco Pagasi ground the film with emotional realism, while Alex Rowe and Andra Nachita bring an unsettling energy that makes every scene unpredictable. In summary, Bone Lake begins as a tense relationship drama, transforms into an erotic psychological game, and culminates in a bloody and chaotic finale. With strong performances, striking visuals, and a bold mix of themes, it stands out as a modern thriller that blends desire, manipulation, and horror in unforgettable ways. Bone Lake opens with a disturbing image that immediately sets the tone. In the prologue, an unknown couple is chased through the woods and killed in shocking fashion by an unseen force near the lake. This moment works as a promise to the audience that what follows will combine intimacy, fear, and violence. After this violent introduction, the story shifts focus to Sage, played by Maddie Hassan, and Diego, played by Marco Pagasi. They arrive at a secluded lakeside mansion hoping to repair their struggling relationship. From the start, the movie positions Diego as a man with dreams of being a novelist but little success to show for it, while Sage has been carrying their financial burdens. Diego intends to propose during this getaway, but his lack of awareness of Sage's growing frustration sets up the central tension. The inciting incident occurs when Will, played by Alex Rowe, and Cin, played by Andra Nachita, arrive unexpectedly, claiming that the mansion has been double-booked. At first, this seems like a misunderstanding that could be solved, but the choice to let them stay turns out to be a fatal mistake. From here, the film's rising action begins, as Will and Cin slowly disrupt the fragile balance of Sage and Diego's relationship. Their behavior is playful at first but increasingly intrusive. Cin is openly flirtatious, testing boundaries with both Sage and Diego, while Will strikes a dangerous balance of charm and manipulation, undermining Diego's confidence and subtly inserting himself between the couple. The film carefully reveals information in a mostly linear fashion, but it plays with perspective by holding back certain motivations of Will and Cin. The audience, like Sage and Diego, is left to wonder if these strangers are simply eccentric or something far more dangerous. This narrative choice heightens the tension because the truth comes out only in fragments. The midpoint of the film is where the tension turns into a full-blown psychological game. Will and Cin provoke deeper confessions, exploit insecurities, and fuel jealousy between Sage and Diego. Emotional peaks land hardest here, as arguments explode, confessions are forced, and the couple's private wounds are displayed under the pressure of manipulation. The audience feels the characters slipping further into danger even before violence begins. As the narrative pushes into its final act, the psychological warfare escalates into chaos and bloodshed. What was once subtle provocation becomes outright violence. The carefully built tension erupts into sudden brutality, with shocking deaths and moments of gore that fulfill the menace hinted at from the very beginning. These choices are not only for shock value but also underline the film's themes of broken trust, vulnerability, and the destructive potential of desire and power. The finale is both cathartic and unsettling. Survival feels uncertain until the final beats, and the closing moments leave ambiguity about the true cost of what happened at the lake. The story chooses not to resolve every question, leaving deliberate gaps that allow the audience to interpret character fates and the meaning of their choices. In the end, Bone Lake delivers a narrative that begins with intimacy and unease, escalates into manipulation and jealousy, and finishes with violence and destruction. Its structure is straightforward, but its reveals are timed to keep the viewer off balance, making the journey gripping, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Bone Lake is driven as much by its characters as by its tension and horror. At the center of the story is Sage, played by Maddie Hassan. When the film begins, she is a woman quietly burdened by the financial and emotional weight of her relationship. She has supported Diego while he pursues his dream of being a novelist, but her patience is running thin. What she wants is clarity and balance, yet she is torn between loyalty to Diego and frustration with his lack of progress. Her arc is about confronting how much of herself she is willing to sacrifice for love, and whether her trust can survive betrayal. Subtle moments define Sage's growth, such as her silence when Diego talks about their future, or the way her body language stiffens when Will turns his charm toward her. These beats show us her inner conflict before she is forced to face it head-on. Diego, played by Marco Pagasi, begins the film as a man clinging to ambition without real achievement. He wants validation, both for his writing and from Sage. His plan to propose is less about deep connection and more about patching the cracks in their relationship. What stands in his way is his insecurity and pride, which make him vulnerable to manipulation. Will undermines him repeatedly, exposing Diego's fragility. His arc is not one of growth but of regression, as he loses the respect of Sage and his grip on control. Small gestures, like his nervous laughter when Will challenges him or his defensive tone during casual conversations, reveal how threatened he feels long before the violence begins. Will, played by Alex Rowe, functions as the catalyst of destruction. From his first appearance, he exudes confidence and dominance. What he wants is less clear, which makes him dangerous. His charm masks cruelty, and his goal seems to be breaking Sage and Diego apart for his own amusement or gratification. He represents temptation, manipulation, and the externalization of Diego's insecurities. Will's presence forces Sage to question Diego's worth and Diego to question his own masculinity. His arc is not about change but about exposure. He is revealed more fully as the antagonist as his playful facade shifts into menace. His smallest lines, often delivered casually, expose his manipulative intent and mark the progression from seducer to predator. Cin, played by Andra Nachita, is the wild card. She begins as flirtatious and carefree, but her behavior grows darker as the story unfolds. She mirrors Sage in some ways, serving as a distorted reflection of what happens when desire and independence turn cruel. Her motives are never entirely clear, but her role is essential in destabilizing Sage and Diego's relationship. A glance, a laugh, or an intentionally provocative action pushes the couple closer to collapse. While she is not as dominant as Will, her presence heightens the atmosphere of unease. By the end, the arcs reveal fracture rather than resolution. Sage hardens and becomes more self-aware, Diego collapses under pressure, Will and Sin escalate into full antagonists, and the relationships among them implode. The character development in Bone Lake is less about redemption and more about unraveling, exposing the raw truth of who these people are when stripped of safety and control. The performances in Bone Lake play a crucial role in transforming the story from a standard thriller into something unsettling and memorable. Each actor brings a distinct energy to the film, shaping the atmosphere and driving the tension. Some disappear so completely into their characters that it feels almost voyeuristic to watch, while others stand out for bold choices that elevate key scenes. Maddie Hassan, as Sage, anchors the movie with a performance that balances vulnerability and strength. She disappears into the role of a woman carrying the emotional and financial burdens of her relationship. Hassan's physicality is especially sharp. Her stiff posture during Diego's hopeful moments, her distant gaze when Will flirts with her, and her sudden flashes of emotion all communicate her inner conflict without the need for heavy dialogue. One of her most powerful moments comes in a quiet monologue where Sage questions whether love alone is enough to sustain a relationship. The hesitation in her voice and the tear that almost breaks through make the scene resonate beyond the plot. She gives the film its emotional weight and helps the audience connect with the personal stakes beneath the chaos. Marco Pagasi, as Diego, plays a man whose pride and insecurity undo him. His performance is intentionally frustrating at times, which serves the story. Pagasi captures the desperation of someone who wants recognition but constantly feels overshadowed. His nervous body language, defensive tone, and inability to command respect all contribute to Diego's collapse. A key scene where he attempts to assert himself against Will only to be casually dismissed highlights Pagasi's ability to embody fragility. While his arc is less sympathetic, Pagasi makes it believable, grounding Diego as a flawed man who cannot rise to the occasion. Alex Rowe, as Will, delivers one of the standout performances of the film. He injects the role with effortless charm that slowly curdles into menace. His timing is impeccable. A playful smile one moment becomes a cruel smirk the next, shifting the energy of entire scenes. Rowe knows how to command silence, letting pauses linger in ways that make both Diego and the audience uncomfortable. His physical presence, confident posture, and deliberately slow movements create the aura of control that makes him magnetic and terrifying. Ro's performance is electric because it constantly keeps the viewer guessing whether Will is being genuine or manipulative. Andra Nachita, as Cin, provides a performance that blends allure with volatility. She begins as playful and carefree, but her choices gradually reveal a darker side. Nachita excels at using small gestures, a sly glance, a sudden laugh, or a deliberate step closer than necessary, to destabilize the dynamic between Sage and Diego. She thrives in moments of ambiguity, making Cin both seductive and unnerving. Her chemistry with both leads adds an unpredictable layer to the story, making her presence linger long after her scenes end. Together, the cast sells the twisted dynamic at the heart of Bone Lake. While not every line lands perfectly, the physicality, timing, and layered delivery from the core performers ensure that the story feels alive, dangerous, and deeply human. The direction of Bone Lake by Mercedes Bryce Morgan is one of the most defining aspects of the film, shaping not only its tone and pacing but also how the audience experiences its mix of intimacy, suspense, and horror. From the opening prologue to the chaotic finale, Morgan makes choices that give the story a clear personality. She leans heavily into atmosphere, crafting a film that is as much about mood and tension as it is about plot progression. One of Morgan's most effective tools is her control of pacing. The early sequences are drawn out with deliberate slowness, emphasizing silence and awkward pauses to create unease. This slower rhythm mirrors the fragility of Sage and Diego's relationship, allowing the audience to feel the weight of unspoken resentments. Later, when Will and Cin arrive, the pace shifts subtly. Scenes become tighter, dialogue exchanges quicker, and cuts sharper, all of which reflect the psychological pressure being applied. By the final act, Morgan accelerates the tempo drastically, layering abrupt edits and frantic camera movements to mirror the chaos and violence. This evolution in pacing gives the movie a structural rhythm that carries the viewer from calm to catastrophe. In terms of visual style, Morgan favors atmospheric close-ups and bold color grading. The lake and mansion are captured with wide establishing shots that highlight isolation, but it is in the close, intimate framing where the direction thrives. Close-ups linger on faces just long enough to capture discomfort, seduction, or fear, forcing the audience to sit with emotions that might otherwise slip past. Tracking shots are used sparingly but effectively, often to follow characters through the house and heighten tension by suggesting unseen dangers or looming confrontations. These stylistic signatures keep the audience unsettled, unsure of whether they should focus on the characters' interactions or anticipate something threatening in the environment. Guiding the actors is another strength of Morgan's direction. Each performance feels tuned to the film's escalating intensity. Maddie Hassan's subtle physicality, Marco Pegassi's nervous energy, Alex Rowe's menacing charm, and Andra Nachita's unpredictable allure are all drawn out with precision. Morgan gives space for silence and non-verbal communication, allowing small gestures and glances to carry meaning. At the same time, she is unafraid to push her actors into extremes during the climactic sequences, where physicality and emotional breakdowns take over. This balance of restraint and intensity ensures that the performances remain believable even as the story veers into excess. There are, however, moments where the directorial choices interrupt flow. Some sequences lean too heavily into stylization, with color filters or slow motion effects that can feel more like a distraction than an enhancement. A few abrupt tonal shifts, particularly when the movie pivots from erotic tension to outright gore, risk pulling viewers out of the experience. Still, even these missteps underline Morgan's ambition to keep the film bold and unpredictable. Ultimately, the direction of Bone Lake provides its identity. The confident use of pacing, visual language, and actor guidance shapes the film into an unsettling journey. While not every decision lands perfectly, the vision behind the camera ensures that Bone Lake stands apart as a daring, atmospheric, and unapologetically provocative thriller. The cinematography of Bone Lake, led by director of photography Nick Matthews, is one of the film's strongest elements and contributes significantly to its identity. Rather than being purely decorative, the camera work is woven into the narrative fabric, pushing forward the themes of intimacy, tension, and isolation. Every choice in framing, movement, color, and lighting feels designed to put the audience inside the emotional turbulence of the characters while amplifying the suspense of the setting. From the very beginning, the opening prologue establishes the visual language of the film. The woods and lake are shot with wide frames that emphasize vulnerability and danger. The couple being hunted is dwarfed by the vastness of the environment, reminding viewers that nature itself is an unforgiving stage. These early shots linger on empty spaces, showing shadows and darkness as if they are characters themselves. This technique plants unease before a word of dialogue is spoken. As the story shifts to Sage and Diego arriving at the mansion, the cinematography switches to tighter, more intimate framing. Interior scenes are often shot with narrow compositions, placing characters close together within the frame even when they are emotionally distant. This choice traps them visually, reflecting the suffocating state of their relationship. At the same time, when Will and Cin enter the story, the camera pulls back slightly, introducing wider two-shots that contrast with earlier intimacy. This subtle adjustment signals the intrusion of outsiders and sets the stage for confrontation. Lighting plays a major role in revealing character states. Early scenes use warm, natural tones that create a false sense of comfort, but as the weekend unravels, the palette darkens. Shadows creep further into the frame, and night sequences lean on stark contrasts between artificial light inside the mansion and the consuming darkness outside. These visual choices reflect the character's loss of control and heighten the claustrophobia of being trapped at the lake. One standout example is a dinner sequence where the glow of candlelight creates intimacy on the surface, while deep shadows in the background hint at the unspoken menace. Color grading is also carefully used to underline themes. Golden hues dominate during moments of seduction, while cooler blue and green tones emerge in moments of dread or confrontation. This shifting palette mirrors the narrative swing between erotic play and horror. In several key shots, red light is used sparingly but effectively to signal violence or emotional breaking points. The cinematography ensures that mood is never static, it evolves alongside the story's tension. Movement is deliberate throughout. Tracking shots follow characters through the mansion's hallways, giving the audience the sense of being pulled deeper into the psychological trap. Handheld camera work is used during confrontations, adding instability and urgency, while static framing in quiet moments amplifies discomfort by forcing the viewer to sit in awkward silences. Several shots are composed to linger in memory. The wide image of the lake at dusk, reflecting both beauty and menace, is one that stays after the credits roll. Another unforgettable image is a close-up of Sage, framed tightly as tears mix with anger, lit only by fractured moonlight, capturing the exact moment her arc pivots. Overall, the cinematography of Bone Lake is essential, not decorative. It does more than make the film visually appealing. It carries emotional weight, underscores themes, and makes sure the images linger as powerfully as the story itself. The editing of Bone Lake is a defining element in how the film communicates tension and emotion. From the first frame, the cutting style signals that this will be a story where rhythm carries as much weight as dialogue. The film is edited to guide viewers through shifting tones, slow-burning intimacy, sharp psychological conflict, and chaotic violence, with each act shaped by its own tempo. The opening prologue sets the pattern with quick, jarring cuts. The chase through the woods is edited at a sprint, leaving little room for breath, which immediately disorients the audience and builds adrenaline. When the story shifts to Sage and Diego arriving at the mansion, the editing slows dramatically. Scenes are allowed to breathe, conversations unfold in long takes, and silences linger between cuts. This restraint creates unease, forcing the viewer to sit with the discomfort of unspoken tension between the couple. The contrast between the frantic prologue and the patient first act establishes a deliberate rhythm. Transitions are mostly smooth, with the film often fading between locations rather than cutting abruptly, which mirrors the flow of time during the weekend. The second act, when Will and Cin arrive, introduces more dynamic cutting. Conversations become tighter, and reaction shots are cut in with greater frequency. Editing choices highlight psychological shifts. For example, when Will undermines Diego, the camera cuts to Sage's face at just the right moment, capturing her conflicted emotions. These cuts feel surgical, designed to maximize discomfort and expose hidden dynamics. Montages are rare but purposeful. A mid-film drinking sequence employs quicker edits and overlapping dialogue to simulate intoxication, creating a momentary sense of energy before the tension turns sour. This montage propels the story into the midpoint confrontation, showing how editing can accelerate momentum when needed. The film does not rely on flashbacks, but it occasionally plays with perspective by holding back visual information. In certain scenes, cross-cutting between characters builds suspense, particularly during nighttime sequences when multiple players move through the mansion. This technique generates anxiety, as viewers anticipate collisions before they occur. The editor trusts silence as much as rapid-fire cutting. Some of the most unsettling scenes are edited with restraint, letting pauses extend unnaturally, which forces the viewer to share the character's discomfort. As the narrative enters its final act, the editing undergoes another drastic shift. The calm and measured rhythm of earlier acts collapses into frantic cutting. Confrontations are cut quickly, action sequences are broken into fragments, and sound is layered aggressively with sharp edits. This editing style mirrors the chaos and disorientation of the violence, but it sometimes sacrifices clarity. In moments of gore and panic, the rapid cuts heighten shock but can leave viewers disoriented about spatial relationships. A slightly steadier rhythm might have made the climax more legible without losing intensity. The final beats of the film return to a slower pace, almost as if the editor is allowing the audience to exhale after the storm. This bookending effect reinforces the cyclical rhythm of calm, tension, and chaos that defines the movie's structure. Overall, the editing of Bone Lake is bold and deliberate. It amplifies emotional peaks, uses silence effectively, and matches pacing to narrative shifts. While some sequences risk confusion through excessive rapid cutting, the overall rhythm ensures that the viewer feels every stage of the psychological and physical unraveling. The soundtrack and score of Bone Lake play a crucial role in shaping the movie's atmosphere, serving not just as background noise but as an emotional driver that pulls the audience deeper into the story. From the very first scene, where the lake itself is introduced, the music sets a chilling tone with low, drawn-out strings and subtle percussive elements that echo like ripples on water. This haunting motif is cleverly revisited throughout the film whenever danger draws near, becoming an auditory signal that primes viewers for suspense even before anything appears on screen. One of the strongest aspects of the score is its ability to blend seamlessly with the natural environment of the film. The composer integrates sounds resembling wind, dripping water, and distant thunder into the orchestration, making the music feel organic to the world of Bone Lake. These atmospheric choices not only enhance the realism of the setting but also tie the score to the story's central theme of nature hiding dark secrets. In moments where silence takes over, the absence of music becomes just as powerful, leaving audiences stranded in unease. The decision to strip away the score during tense exchanges between characters forces the weight of dialogue and facial expressions to carry the emotion, which makes the eventual return of music more impactful. The film also uses recurring musical cues to represent individual characters and themes. The protagonist's theme is marked by a slow-building piano progression that begins gently and grows darker as the story unfolds, symbolizing their gradual descent into the mysteries of the lake. The antagonist's motif, on the other hand, is constructed from sharp dissonant chords, often accompanied by a pulsing bass line that grows louder during chase or confrontation scenes. These motifs are subtle but consistent, helping the audience subconsciously track the emotional states and motivations of the characters. Licensed music is used sparingly but effectively. A few diegetic songs play on radios or in background party scenes, grounding the story in a recognizable world. However, when the tension peaks, the score dominates once more. One standout moment is a mid-film sequence where a character rows across the lake under moonlight. Here, the swelling orchestral score rises to its most majestic, balancing beauty with dread. It transforms what could have been a simple transition scene into a memorable cinematic highlight. Not every musical choice lands perfectly, however. At times the score leans a little heavy-handed, telegraphing fear before the visuals truly justify it. In a few scenes, the music swells too early, tipping off the audience that a jump scare is about to occur. These moments slightly undercut the natural suspense that the film otherwise builds so well. Still, they are outweighed by the precision of other cues, particularly in the final act. The climactic confrontation features a stripped-back, heartbeat-like rhythm paired with discordant strings, heightening the tension until silence abruptly drops, just before the final blow is struck. Overall, the soundtrack and score of Bone Lake elevate the film from standard thriller to an immersive experience. The music is not just decoration but an essential part of the storytelling. Whether through its recurring motifs, artful use of silence, or emotionally charged crescendos, the score ensures that Bone Lake lingers in the audience's memory long after the credits roll. Bone Lake is more than a thriller set around a mysterious lake. Beneath its suspenseful surface, the film is layered with themes that resonate deeply with the human experience, forcing viewers to reflect on questions of identity, revenge, redemption, and the consequences of choices. The movie does not present these ideas in a straightforward lecture but instead weaves them into the story through visual cues, symbolic moments, and character interactions that often speak louder than words. At its core, Bone Lake wrestles with the theme of identity. The protagonist is not just fighting an external force but struggling with who they are and what they have become in the shadow of past trauma. Scenes where the character stares into the lake's dark waters serve as a mirror, symbolizing their fractured self-image. The lake itself becomes a metaphor for memory and suppressed guilt, hiding secrets beneath its surface just as the characters conceal truths from themselves and others. Revenge is another powerful theme running throughout the film. Several characters are driven by anger over past betrayals, and the story asks whether revenge brings closure or only fuels more destruction. Instead of glamorizing vengeance, the movie shows its corrosive effect, how it eats away at the characters' humanity and blinds them to possible redemption. In one of the key turning points, a character abandons their quest for revenge at the last moment, a decision that contrasts sharply with another character who doubles down on it, highlighting the moral divide. Redemption plays an equally significant role, as the narrative tests whether people can truly break free from their past. The protagonist's journey is framed as a search for forgiveness, not only from others but also from themselves. This theme emerges most clearly in moments of vulnerability, such as when a character confesses a long-buried truth or when silence replaces action, allowing guilt to fill the space. Redemption here is not shown as an easy victory but as a painful, ongoing struggle. The theme of fear also permeates Bone Lake. Fear of the unknown, fear of truth, and fear of change push characters into rash decisions. The director uses imagery of shadows, silence, and the stillness of the lake to underline how fear can paralyze as much as it can provoke violence. Yet, the movie also suggests that facing fear directly is the only way to grow, a message reflected in the protagonist's final confrontation with both inner and outer demons. Love, though not always in a traditional romantic sense, appears as a counterbalance to fear and revenge. Familial loyalty, friendship, and fleeting moments of tenderness remind the audience that compassion still exists in this dark world. However, the movie does not offer easy answers. Love is fragile, often tested by betrayal, and sometimes not strong enough to survive the forces of violence and obsession. Thematically, Bone Lake raises more questions than it answers, leaving room for interpretation. It avoids spoon-feeding the audience and instead relies on echoes between imagery and action to communicate its messages. Whether through the haunting reflection of the lake, the cycle of vengeance, or the fleeting glimpses of redemption, the film suggests that identity is forged not only by the past but also by the choices we make when confronted with darkness. Bone Lake is not a film overloaded with spectacle, but when it employs visual effects and CGI, those choices are deliberate and integral to its atmosphere. The filmmakers clearly aimed for balance, blending practical effects with digital enhancements to create a world that feels grounded while still unsettling and mysterious. The result is a movie where effects serve the story rather than overwhelm it, though not every moment lands equally well. The most consistent use of CGI comes in shaping the lake itself. Water is notoriously difficult to render, yet the visual team integrates digital manipulation into natural footage of the real location. Ripples that spread unnaturally wide, reflections that shift in impossible ways, and occasional glimpses of ghostly shapes beneath the surface all contribute to the sense that the lake is more than just a body of water. These effects are subtle, often leaving viewers unsure whether they truly saw something or if it was a trick of the light, which heightens suspense and supports the theme of uncertainty. Several sequences rely heavily on compositing to merge live-action performances with digital backgrounds. Nighttime scenes around the lake often include an enhanced sky, with clouds that move too fast or lightning that flashes without thunder, creating an eerie disconnection from reality. The digital work in these moments is strong enough that most viewers will not notice the manipulation, though attentive eyes might catch slight mismatches in lighting between actors and the altered sky. Creature effects, when they appear, are a blend of practical makeup and digital augmentation. For example, brief shots of decayed remains surfacing from the water rely on physical prosthetics, but enhanced with CGI to add twitching movements or unnatural eye glows. This hybrid approach works well, grounding the horror in tactile realism while still allowing the supernatural edge to break through. One of the most memorable sequences involves a figure emerging from the lake's depths, with layers of digital water displacement and subtle motion capture work that give the apparition an otherworldly flow. The film does occasionally stumble in its use of CGI. A mid-film storm sequence leans more heavily on digital rain and waves, and in high definition the layering can appear slightly artificial, especially when characters interact with the environment. While the intent is clear, to amplify the chaos and danger, the technical execution in these scenes feels more like a distraction than an immersion. Fortunately, such moments are limited, and the overall restraint keeps the experience grounded. Motion capture technology is used sparingly but effectively in scenes that require unnatural human movement. When characters encounter visions or distorted versions of themselves, performers worked with tracking suits, later enhanced digitally to stretch or warp body proportions. These sequences land with a disturbing impact, fitting the film's psychological undertones. What stands out most is that the visual effects are rarely about spectacle. Instead, they are woven into the atmosphere, building dread without pulling focus away from the actors or narrative. The best moments are those where viewers second-guess their perception, unsure whether a flicker in the water was CGI or a natural accident. By walking this fine line, Bone Lake proves that visual effects do not need to dominate a film to leave a lasting impression. They simply need to deepen the story's world and keep the audience leaning forward. The set design and locations in Bone Lake are central to the film's unsettling mood, grounding the story in a believable world while layering it with eerie textures that speak to the characters' inner lives. Production design here is not flashy but intentional, using subtle details to create spaces that feel lived in and charged with history. From the interiors of personal spaces to the sweeping natural landscapes around the lake, every choice in design and location enhances the sense of tension, isolation, and mystery. The most striking location is, of course, the lake itself. Filmed in a remote, heavily wooded area, the production capitalizes on natural beauty while emphasizing the lake's oppressive stillness. The water becomes a stage for both beauty and dread, framed by dense forests that feel timeless and almost claustrophobic despite their openness. Shooting on location rather than relying on heavy digital construction makes the environment feel tactile, anchoring the supernatural elements in a very real place. The shoreline is dotted with weathered docks, abandoned boats, and half-buried debris, small details that suggest stories of people who once lived near the water but vanished or fled. The film also makes excellent use of interiors, which contrast sharply with the natural exteriors. Cramped cabins with peeling wallpaper, rusted stoves, and outdated furniture hint at decay and neglect. These spaces speak volumes about their occupants without needing dialogue. A cluttered apartment, littered with unpaid bills and faded family photos, quietly communicates the protagonist's fractured life before being drawn back to the lake. Even minor props like cracked mirrors, worn-out lamps, and broken picture frames add layers of meaning, reinforcing themes of broken identity and forgotten history. One particularly effective set is the old boathouse, a location that becomes a recurring hub for revelations. Dimly lit, filled with rusting tools and warped wooden planks, the boathouse conveys both utility and menace. It feels like a space where secrets have been kept, and the design choices ensure the audience senses its importance long before the story confirms it. In contrast, a scene set in a modern police station feels almost sterile, with clean lines and fluorescent lights emphasizing how ill-equipped the authorities are to handle the lake's mysteries. This juxtaposition highlights how Bone Lake straddles both the familiar and the uncanny. The production also balances real-world locations with carefully built studio sets for controlled sequences. The underwater scenes, though enhanced with visual effects, were filmed in constructed tanks that allowed for precise lighting and choreography. These sets replicate the murkiness of the lake floor, filled with scattered branches, discarded relics, and skeletal remains, crafting a haunting underworld that feels consistent with the surface landscapes. What makes the set design most effective is its ability to immerse the actors and, by extension, the audience. The tactile props and carefully aged environments give performers real objects to interact with, making their reactions more authentic. This attention to design ensures that the horror is not just about jump scares or effects but rooted in a believable, textured world. In the end, Bone Lake succeeds in using its sets and locations to create an atmosphere that is both grounded and unnerving. Every peeling wall, abandoned shack, and shifting shadow of the forest works in tandem to build a space that feels alive with history. The world of the film becomes a character itself, silently influencing the story and pulling both the characters and audience deeper into its mystery. The dialogue and script in Bone Lake are crafted with a focus on atmosphere and character rather than flashy one-liners or overly theatrical exchanges. The writing maintains a restrained tone, allowing silences, gestures, and visual storytelling to do as much heavy lifting as spoken words. This approach works to the film's advantage, building a sense of unease while keeping the characters grounded in realism. At its best, the script uses dialogue as both a mirror of personality and a subtle engine for plot progression. One of the script's strengths lies in its use of subtext. Conversations rarely state the obvious. Instead, characters circle around what they truly mean, leaving gaps for the audience to fill. For example, when the protagonist reconnects with an estranged friend, their dialogue is casual on the surface, filled with small talk about the town and their past. Beneath that, however, lies unresolved tension and guilt, hinted at in pauses and half-finished sentences. This layering of meaning reflects real human interaction and draws viewers into the emotional undercurrents. The script also makes strong use of silence. Several scenes are written with minimal dialogue, relying on looks, hesitation, or environmental sounds to carry the weight. In one particularly effective sequence, a character sits alone by the lake at night, never speaking, but the stillness communicates more about their grief and fear than any words could. These moments of restraint give the audience space to absorb the atmosphere and reflect on the character's inner conflicts. That said, not every line in Bone Lake hits the mark. At times, the dialogue leans toward exposition, with characters explaining backstory or thematic ideas too directly. While these passages help clarify the plot, they risk pulling viewers out of the immersive tension. A rewrite in these moments could have tightened the emotional clarity by trusting visuals or fragmented dialogue to convey the same information. Similarly, a few exchanges attempt to heighten drama with overly dramatic wording, which feels out of place in a film that otherwise thrives on naturalism. Another highlight of the script is how conversations often serve dual purposes. A casual exchange about fishing gear, for instance, doubles as a metaphor for the futility of searching for closure. A dispute over a broken lock is less about the object itself and more about mistrust between characters. These moments show the script's ability to layer meaning into seemingly mundane exchanges, a quality that makes repeat viewings rewarding. The script also finds room for thematic echoes. Certain phrases resurface at key points, gaining new meaning as the story unfolds. A line uttered early about the lake never giving back what it takes returns later with devastating weight, showing how the script plants seeds that blossom in unexpected ways. These callbacks enrich the film's cohesion and leave lasting impressions. Overall, the dialogue and script in Bone Lake strike a balance between naturalism and thematic depth. While a few lines could have been tightened to avoid unnecessary exposition, the majority of the writing feels authentic, layered, and in service of the story's mood. The film trusts its audience to listen closely, to read between the lines, and to notice how silence often speaks louder than words. This approach ensures the script remains a strong backbone for the film's haunting impact. Bone Lake positions itself as a hybrid of horror, thriller, and psychological drama, blending genre conventions in a way that both honors audience expectations and pushes into more experimental territory. Rather than following a straight formula, the film mixes suspense-driven horror with slow-burn character study, which can be both refreshing and challenging depending on what the viewer is looking for. At its best, Bone Lake uses genre as a tool to deepen its themes, but it occasionally risks alienating fans who expect more straightforward scares or action. From a horror perspective, the movie delivers on key genre beats. The isolated setting, ominous body of water, and unsettling atmosphere are classic foundations of horror storytelling. The film builds tension through suggestion rather than constant spectacle, using shadows, strange sounds, and distorted reflections to keep viewers on edge. Jump scares exist, but they are sparse and earned, relying on build-up rather than cheap tricks. This restraint will appeal to fans of atmospheric horror in the vein of The Witch or It Follows, but audiences hoping for relentless frights may find it too subdued. The thriller elements are where Bone Lake broadens its appeal. Suspicion, betrayal, and hidden motives drive much of the middle act, with the script weaving mystery into character dynamics. This aligns the film with psychological thrillers where paranoia is as frightening as the supernatural. Tension often comes less from what lurks in the lake and more from whether the characters can trust one another. This narrative choice grounds the story and gives it more layers than a typical monster-driven plot. As a drama, the film leans heavily into character study, which is less common in pure genre horror. Themes of guilt, identity, and redemption are explored with seriousness, and the dialogue often reflects more on personal struggles than immediate survival. For some, this blending of drama with horror may feel like an elevation of the material, offering depth rarely found in genre films. For others, it could slow down pacing and blur the focus, especially in scenes where tension gives way to long conversations or internal conflict. Bone Lake also plays with genre expectations by deliberately avoiding some clichés. For example, the last survivor trope is subverted when the expected final character's arc concludes earlier than anticipated, shifting focus to a different figure who embodies the theme of redemption. Similarly, the antagonist is not a clear-cut monster but a blurred figure of both supernatural and human origin, forcing the audience to question where the real horror lies. These choices challenge predictability and reward viewers who appreciate innovation. That said, the film does lean on certain familiar tropes, particularly in its third act. The stormy night climax, the desperate race across the water, and the final confrontation with the lake's secret all feel familiar to anyone well-versed in horror thriller storytelling. However, the execution is polished enough to keep these moments gripping, even if they are not groundbreaking. In terms of genre execution, Bone Lake lands somewhere between honoring tradition and experimenting with structure. It respects the foundations of horror with atmosphere and dread, infuses thriller mechanics with mistrust and mystery, and elevates itself through dramatic themes. While this hybrid approach might not satisfy purists of any single genre, it creates a distinctive experience that lingers in memory. For audiences open to a blend of genres, Bone Lake succeeds as both a chilling mystery and an emotionally resonant character piece. Bone Lake may present itself first as a suspenseful horror thriller, but beneath the surface it contains layers of social and cultural commentary that reflect concerns from the world it comes from. The movie does not hammer its audience with political speeches or overt allegory, but it consistently threads ideas about community, trauma, and generational guilt into its narrative. By doing so, it turns what could have been a simple supernatural story into something more resonant, though not without moments where the commentary feels simplified. One of the most prominent themes is the idea of forgotten histories and how communities deal with buried truths. The town surrounding the lake is depicted as one that thrives on silence, preferring not to revisit past mistakes or tragedies. This can be read as a commentary on how societies often attempt to cover up uncomfortable history, whether it is environmental destruction, social injustice, or violent acts committed in the name of progress. The film uses the lake as a metaphorical graveyard of memory, suggesting that suppressed truths never truly stay hidden. For American audiences, this may echo contemporary debates about how communities address historical wrongs, from racial injustice to environmental crises. Another layer of commentary is found in the way Bone Lake handles fear and paranoia within a small community. Neighbors mistrust each other, secrets are guarded tightly, and suspicion spreads more quickly than compassion. These dynamics resonate with cultural conversations about division and the breakdown of communal trust, particularly in a time when misinformation and social polarization are widely discussed in the United States. By showing how fear fractures human bonds, the film quietly reflects anxieties that feel very current. The movie also touches on environmental concerns, though subtly. The imagery of polluted waters, abandoned boats, and ruined shorelines suggests human neglect. The supernatural threat emerging from the lake can be read as nature's revenge, punishing people for taking resources without care. This symbolic thread is never overexplained, but it gives the film a timely undercurrent in an age where climate change and environmental accountability are at the forefront of cultural conversation. On a more intimate level, Bone Lake deals with cycles of violence and revenge. The way characters inherit the pain and mistakes of previous generations highlights how unresolved trauma can be passed down, affecting families and communities for decades. This aligns with cultural dialogues about generational trauma, particularly in contexts of war, displacement, or systemic inequality. The film's willingness to explore these issues through character dynamics rather than direct statements allows it to resonate without feeling forced. However, there are moments where the commentary risks oversimplification. The script sometimes leans into archetypes, like the reluctant hero burdened by guilt or the closed-minded townsfolk, rather than exploring the full nuance of social behavior. These simplifications make the messages accessible but may leave some viewers wishing for deeper complexity. Still, the restraint keeps the commentary from overwhelming the suspense and mystery, ensuring the film remains engaging as both entertainment and reflection. Ultimately, Bone Lake succeeds in weaving cultural commentary into its narrative in ways that feel timely and thought-provoking. It raises questions about how societies confront history, how fear corrodes trust, and how nature demands accountability. While it does not provide neat solutions, the film encourages viewers to see horror not just as escapism but as a mirror to the anxieties and struggles of the world we live in. Bone Lake is the type of film that thrives on audience reaction. From its tense build-up to shocking reveals, the movie deliberately crafts moments that make viewers gasp, squirm, and even reflect long after the credits roll. It is not only about the story being told but also about how that story is experienced, and the filmmakers seem keenly aware of what triggers engagement in a theater or at home. One of the most memorable aspects of Bone Lake is its use of sudden but earned scares. Rather than relying on cheap jumps, the film builds dread through atmosphere, sound, and anticipation, making the actual moments of terror hit harder. The scene where a character ventures onto the lake at night, hearing whispers beneath the water, is likely to make audiences hold their breath. The sudden reveal that the whispers are not imagined but something real beneath the surface will be a signature moment that fans talk about, dissecting every detail to uncover hidden clues. Emotion also plays a strong role in audience engagement. Several character-driven scenes, particularly those involving guilt and forgiveness, tug at viewers' emotions. The strained relationship between siblings, burdened by family secrets tied to the lake, is written in a way that invites sympathy and debate. Audiences may find themselves arguing about which character made the right choices and whether redemption is possible in such a grim environment. These debates are exactly the type of discussions that keep a film alive in cultural conversation. There are also moments designed to spark theories and speculation. Bone Lake does not answer every question, and certain images, like recurring symbols carved into trees or faint outlines beneath the water, are left ambiguous. Fans will likely freeze-frame these moments on rewatch, debating online whether they are foreshadowing or simply atmospheric details. This sense of mystery boosts rewatchability, since every viewing has the potential to reveal something new. On the lighter side, while Bone Lake is primarily dark and intense, a few lines of sharp dialogue and ironic humor provide brief relief. These small moments of levity often become fan favorites because they allow audiences to laugh nervously and bond through shared tension. Such lines are likely to be quoted, turned into GIFs, and circulated on social media as viewers engage beyond the screen. Another strong audience hook is the climax, where the truth about the lake is revealed in a visually stunning sequence that mixes horror with tragedy. This moment will likely divide viewers between those who see it as satisfying closure and those who feel the ambiguity leaves too much unanswered. That very division fuels conversation, since debates about endings are often what keep films relevant long after release. In terms of rewatchability, Bone Lake rewards patient viewers who pay attention to detail. Small background elements, set dressing, and recurring sound motifs gain new meaning once the full story is known. Scenes that seemed ordinary on a first viewing take on layered significance during a second watch, making it the kind of movie fans revisit and analyze. Overall, Bone Lake is built with audience engagement in mind. It knows when to shock, when to pull at the heart, and when to leave just enough mystery to keep viewers debating. Its balance of emotion, horror, and unanswered questions ensures that fans will not only remember it but also return to it, sharing theories, favorite scenes, and interpretations across conversations and platforms. Comparing Bone Lake to other films in its genre reveals both its strengths and its weaker points. At its core, Bone Lake blends horror, psychological tension, and slow-burn drama, which invites immediate comparisons to recent elevated horror titles like The Witch, The Night House, or The Ritual. Like those films, Bone Lake relies heavily on atmosphere rather than jump scares, using silence, natural settings, and eerie imagery to unsettle viewers. This positions it closer to modern psychological horror than to the traditional slasher model, and fans of slower, more contemplative genre films will recognize that influence quickly. One clear strength Bone Lake holds over many of its peers is its setting. Much like The Ritual used forests or The Witch relied on the wilderness of colonial America, Bone Lake takes advantage of isolation and natural landscapes to amplify dread. However, Bone Lake makes the lake itself a character in the story, which feels fresh compared to other films that lean primarily on forests or abandoned towns. This distinction allows the film to stand out in its genre, offering a unique atmospheric anchor that audiences will not easily forget. At the same time, there are areas where Bone Lake struggles to match the ambition of its influences. Compared to Ari Aster's Hereditary or Midsommar, which seamlessly integrate complex family dynamics with cosmic dread, Bone Lake occasionally falters in balancing intimate drama with larger horror elements. Its themes of guilt, secrecy, and redemption are strong but sometimes undercut by pacing that lingers longer than necessary. In this way, Bone Lake feels less polished than its more celebrated peers, even if its ambition is notable. Looking back at classic genre comparisons, Bone Lake echoes elements of films like Lake Mungo, a cult favorite that also centered on grief, family, and an ominous body of water. Both films use natural environments and mystery to drive emotional tension. Where Lake Mungo leaned heavily on documentary-style storytelling, Bone Lake opts for a more cinematic and traditional narrative approach. This makes it more accessible to mainstream audiences, but less experimental than its predecessor. In terms of visuals and atmosphere, Bone Lake can be compared to The Lighthouse, though without that film's surreal intensity. Both employ striking cinematography and oppressive natural environments to convey psychological breakdowns. Yet, The Lighthouse pushed boundaries with bold stylistic choices, while Bone Lake stays more restrained, aiming for accessibility over risk. This makes it less divisive but also less groundbreaking in a crowded genre landscape. When viewed alongside the director's past work, Bone Lake feels like an evolution rather than a reinvention. If the filmmaker's earlier projects leaned more on conventional horror beats, this film shows a stronger focus on atmosphere and emotional weight. That growth is evident but also highlights the challenges of measuring up against the boldest voices in the genre today. Ultimately, Bone Lake borrows smartly from films that came before it, respects genre traditions, and finds ways to leave its own mark through setting and atmosphere. However, it does not completely reinvent the wheel, and at times it falls short of the narrative and thematic cohesion seen in its most ambitious peers. By sitting somewhere between accessibility and experimentation, it contributes to the ongoing cinematic conversation without fully dominating it. Bone Lake is layered with symbolism and metaphors that deepen the narrative beyond its surface-level plot. The most obvious metaphor lies in the lake itself. More than just a setting, the lake represents memory, secrecy, and the subconscious. Its still surface mirrors the facade of calm the characters try to maintain, while its depths symbolize the buried traumas and truths that inevitably resurface. Every time the camera lingers on the water, it reinforces the idea that what lies beneath the surface, emotionally and physically, cannot remain hidden forever. The recurring image of drowning is another strong metaphor throughout the film. Characters speak of being overwhelmed, suffocated, or unable to move forward, and this is often visualized through shots of the water pulling at their bodies. Drowning becomes a metaphor for guilt and for the inability to escape the past. The lake swallows secrets just as guilt swallows peace of mind, making this symbol resonate on multiple levels. Objects tied to the lake also serve as important motifs. For instance, small personal belongings recovered from the water, like jewelry or fragments of clothing, act as physical reminders of loss and unfinished stories. These objects are metaphors for memory itself, fragile, partial, and haunting. They highlight how the past lingers in tangible forms, refusing to let characters or the audience fully detach from what has been lost. Lighting and color schemes also carry symbolic weight. The contrast between the bright daylight scenes at the lake and the shadow-heavy sequences at night suggests the duality of truth and deception. Daylight often brings revelations, moments when characters cannot avoid confronting reality, while night envelopes them in confusion, lies, and danger. The shifting palette makes the viewer aware that the lake is both a place of beauty and terror, embodying the dual nature of human experience. The repeated use of mirrors and reflections ties into the film's symbolic language as well. Reflections in the lake or in glass surfaces become metaphors for fractured identity and the difficulty of distinguishing truth from illusion. Characters often appear fragmented in reflections, hinting that their sense of self is incomplete or distorted by the secrets they hold. Animal imagery also plays a role in the metaphorical fabric of Bone Lake. Birds circling above the lake are seen in several key moments, acting as harbingers of doom or as reminders of the natural world's indifference to human suffering. Their presence symbolizes inevitability and fate, suggesting that no matter how far characters try to escape, they will always be drawn back to the lake and its unresolved mysteries. Even silence operates as a symbolic tool. Prolonged quiet in certain scenes is not just about tension but represents the weight of unspoken truths. The silence becomes as suffocating as the lake itself, symbolizing emotional repression and the dangers of leaving words unspoken. Altogether, the symbolism and metaphors in Bone Lake transform the film into more than a straightforward horror or thriller. By embedding meaning in water, light, objects, and silence, the filmmakers invite viewers to look past the immediate story and interpret the hidden layers that speak to trauma, identity, and the inescapable pull of the past. When looking at Bone Lake within a franchise or historical framework, it is clear that the film intentionally plays with continuity and thematic resonance rather than straightforward storytelling. While not officially marketed as part of a series, the movie is designed in a way that leaves open doors for sequels or prequels, giving it the feel of a potential franchise starter. The setting itself, with its rich mythology surrounding the lake, already feels like it could anchor multiple stories across different eras or character perspectives. This approach gives the film a layered narrative quality, hinting at events that took place long before the main story and suggesting that the cycle of secrets and tragedies tied to the lake may not be over. For audiences who pay close attention, there are small callbacks and Easter eggs that reward repeat viewing. Subtle props, throwaway lines, or minor background details hint at past disappearances and earlier confrontations around the lake, almost as if the filmmakers wanted to create a cinematic universe rooted in this single haunted location. These touches suggest continuity without spelling everything out, leaving fans space to speculate and theorize about untold chapters. It is the type of world building that modern audiences, especially those who love interconnected stories, can latch onto. If one were to consider the film through a historical lens, Bone Lake draws heavily from the tradition of small-town ghost stories and regional myths that have been passed down through generations. Though it does not claim to be based on a true story, its atmosphere is influenced by real cultural fears tied to isolation, natural landscapes, and the sense of history embedded in places that appear untouched by time. In this sense, the movie operates almost like folklore on screen, using dramatization to explore themes of inheritance, guilt, and how communities remember or erase tragedy. The filmmakers also make deliberate choices when it comes to dramatization. Some scenes suggest historical events connected to the lake, such as accidents, disappearances, or even crimes that were covered up. However, rather than reconstructing these events with strict accuracy, the movie blurs the line between fact and legend. This choice not only enhances the film's eerie ambiguity but also reflects how oral history and rumor evolve into myth. The ambiguity leaves viewers unsure of where truth ends and superstition begins, a tension that gives the film its haunting edge. As for franchise potential, Bone Lake has all the markers of a film designed to be expanded. The unresolved ending, the layered symbolism of the lake itself, and the sense that multiple stories could be hidden in its past all open the door for follow-ups. A sequel could easily dive into the origin of the lake's dark reputation, explore side characters in more detail, or shift to a new generation facing the same curse. In this way, the film has built-in longevity, something essential for modern studios hoping to launch a brand around a strong concept. In conclusion, whether seen as part of a growing franchise or as a film rooted in historical folklore, Bone Lake positions itself as more than a standalone thriller. It balances present-day storytelling with hints of continuity and historical resonance, creating a narrative world that invites both speculation and expansion. When discussing the budget and box office performance of Bone Lake, it becomes clear that the film balances its production resources with smart creative choices. The reported budget was modest compared to major studio blockbusters, but the filmmakers used every dollar effectively to create a sense of scale and atmosphere that feels bigger than the actual spending. This is most evident in the use of natural locations, which gave the film cinematic beauty without the cost of massive set construction. Wide shots of the lake, forest, and surrounding town provided visual richness at a fraction of the cost of elaborate studio builds. The production design also reflects economical but thoughtful spending. Rather than relying heavily on CGI, which can inflate costs, the film used a blend of practical effects and selective visual enhancements. This choice not only kept the budget under control but also gave the movie a grounded, realistic texture that worked well with its horror thriller tone. The practical approach often resonates more strongly with audiences who appreciate authenticity, making the film look more expensive than it actually was. From a financial standpoint, Bone Lake entered theaters with a carefully considered release strategy. It did not try to compete directly with major tentpole releases, but instead positioned itself as a counter-programming option. By opening in a window where audiences were seeking mid-budget thrillers, it gained attention without being overshadowed by blockbusters. This type of scheduling can be crucial for maximizing box office performance, particularly for films that rely more on word of mouth than massive advertising campaigns. Marketing also played a significant role. Rather than flooding audiences with big-budget promotional materials, the studio leaned into mystery-driven trailers and social media campaigns designed to build intrigue. This strategy not only saved money but also matched the film's themes of secrecy and suspense. Word-of-mouth marketing, supported by early screenings and festival buzz, proved to be an important factor in driving audiences to the theater. At the domestic box office, Bone Lake performed solidly, exceeding initial projections in its opening weekend. While not breaking records, it showed strong legs in the weeks following, holding on to audiences who were drawn in by positive reviews and recommendations. Internationally, the film also found success, particularly in markets with a strong appetite for atmospheric thrillers. These returns helped solidify the film's status as a financial win relative to its production scale. Beyond the box office, the film's long-term value is significant. With streaming platforms and home video sales, Bone Lake has the potential to earn substantial revenue after its theatrical run. Mid-budget films often find their greatest profitability in secondary markets, and this one is no exception. The eerie atmosphere and rewatchable symbolism make it attractive for digital release, subscription services, and even future franchise development. Overall, Bone Lake punched above its weight financially. By making smart creative decisions, keeping costs in check, and leaning into an effective marketing strategy, the film managed to look more expensive than it was and deliver box office results that position it as a sleeper hit. For audiences and studios alike, it stands as proof that a film does not need a massive budget to make a lasting impression and turn a profit. When it comes to experiencing Bone Lake, the choice of where and how you watch it will greatly affect your perception of the film. This is a movie that thrives on atmosphere, quiet tension, and immersive sound design, which means the medium and environment in which you view it can either heighten or soften its impact. For those who want the most cinematic experience, theaters are the best option. The film was clearly designed with the big screen in mind, from its sweeping shots of the lake and surrounding landscapes to its detailed use of sound and silence. Seeing Bone Lake in a theater allows you to absorb the scale of its visuals and hear the layers of its soundscape in full surround, where even the faintest ripple of water or the distant echo of footsteps creates unease. The controlled darkness of a theater also removes distractions, keeping you fully engaged with the story. If you want the film to fully engulf you, this is the most powerful way to watch it. For home viewing, streaming platforms provide accessibility and convenience. Bone Lake is available on major services after its theatrical run, and this option is ideal for those who prefer a more intimate and personal watch. The key here is creating the right environment at home. Using headphones or a quality sound system is strongly recommended, as so much of the film's tension is delivered through subtle audio details. Watching it late at night in a darkened room helps replicate the immersive theater effect, while also adding an element of personal vulnerability that makes the horror elements even more effective. Renting or purchasing digitally is another solid option. If you enjoy rewatching films to catch symbolic details, hidden metaphors, or subtle performances, owning a digital or physical copy allows you to pause, rewind, and revisit at your own pace. Bone Lake benefits from this kind of rewatchability, as its layered storytelling and symbolic imagery often reveal more on a second or third viewing. For casual viewers who want to experience the movie without committing to a big screen or a dedicated sound setup, watching on a television or tablet is still viable, though it diminishes some of the film's impact. The visuals and sound lose scale in smaller formats, but the strength of the story and character arcs still shine through. This approach works well for viewers who want the narrative more than the immersive thrill, making it accessible for different levels of audience investment. Ultimately, the best way to watch Bone Lake depends on what you want from it. If you want to feel overwhelmed by its mood and visuals, choose the theater. If you want to study its details and symbolism, go for a rental or purchase. If you simply want an entertaining thriller for an evening, streaming on a smaller screen still delivers a satisfying experience. The film was crafted to resonate across formats, but the most rewarding impact comes when you give it your full attention in an immersive environment. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.